Hello, and welcome to Beecraft Live again. This is our special Asian Hornet event as part of the BBKA Asian Hornet Week. We're joined by several experienced beekeepers this week again, with first-hand experience in the identification and the management of the Asian Hornet. Wendy, would you want to jump in quickly before we do the main introductions? Because everybody knows you and myself, and perhaps you could give an overview of where we are with Asian Hornet sightings in the UK. It's very active at the moment. We timed this perfectly well.
Absolutely. Perfectly well, yeah. So, right. Because I'm in Devon, I'm particularly interested, obviously, in this neck of the woods. But the Asian Hornet that was found in Foy, the nest was found and destroyed by the National Bee Unit. But subsequently, there have been sightings in Liscard, which isn't that far from Foy, and also up in Hull in East Yorkshire. But I think probably most people know that. I did have an email from a lady whose son actually killed one, or thought she killed one, not far on actually on the Camel Trail. About 15 miles from Foy. So, you know, whether that was a bona fide one or not, I don't know. It hasn't been confirmed. I haven't heard anything further at all as to how they're getting on. I'm hoping that our other guests might have more information on that. But that's how it stands at the moment. And as far as I understand, the National Bee Unit are in attendance at both sites. So they're going to be pretty spread pretty thin if these sightings continue, because there was also one 2 or 3 weeks ago. One was found on a pool to Cherbourg ferry, which wasn't publicised. It was actually on Facebook, but because we couldn't get any corroboration of that, we didn't do anything about publicising it. So that's pretty much where we are at the moment. But in the West Country, I think everybody's pretty much on alert down in the Plymouth, Saltash, South Devon, part of Cornwall. You know, everybody's on major alert. And I think we need to bear in mind, of course, that the East Coast is probably more dangerous, if you like, because there's such a lot of people travelling to and from the continent with camper vans, on yachts, ferries. So, you know, it's an area that I think we're all pretty worried about. Oh. Sorry, I'm absolutely bright red because I'm really, really hot.
Kevin, do you want to give an introduction? I think everybody knows you by now, but you're our resident Asian Hornet expert almost, aren't you? You live with them on a day-to-day basis. You've got first-hand experience.
Yeah, expert's a really strong word. No. But we live in southwest France, and we live with Asian Hornets every day of our beekeeping lives. We've kept bees in this part of France for 3.5, nearly 4 years, having learned our trade, as it were, in the UK. And there are lots of differences, not least some of the things we'll share with you today, hopefully, and some answers to some questions, is just how we can reconcile the difference between needing to understand the animal, the beastie that is Asian Hornets, and better look at the bigger picture and how it fits into our ecosystem, and not because nobody wants to damage an ecosystem. And I'm sure that the natural beekeepers, certainly the ones in our bee club here, would say, just let Mother Nature take its course. Mother Nature knows best. And in 10,000 years, I'm sure Mother Nature will come up with a solution. But right now, our bees are being predated on at a rate of 50 per hornet per day. And so we would like to share with you some of the things that are being done in France, and to try and strike that right balance between one extreme, considering genocide, to wipe out this species, which we don't want to do, really, but at the other end, doing something that makes our bees' lives easier, because it's tough enough for them as it is in the 21st century.
I think, if I remember right, the last time you were on talking about the Asian Hornets, it was electrocution, poisoning, drowning. You touched upon everything, didn't you, to try and...
Pretty much. And badminton rackets are still quite effective, and we'll show you the results of some of that in due course.
We've got some really interesting photographs that I'm sure everyone would like to see in terms of the numbers of Asian Hornets that Kevin is dealing with. So Jerry and Colin, would you like to give an introduction about yourselves, where you're from, what you do, your experience?
Go on, Jerry.
Okay, hi, I'm Jerry Stewart. I'm retired. I've been a beekeeper for 11 years. I'm the beekeeper for Paynton Zoo, and that's through the Bee4 project, which is a project that assists the native black honeybee, and we're very pleased to announce, so a little bit of a plug, that we're going to have the second opening of the second bee reserve at Haddigan on the 26th of September. And so that's something to note in the diary. I'm part of the Asian Hornet action team for Torbay, and we proactively set up equipment as well as a program of talking to the schools, local council and pest control authorities and rangers from the parks. And so we're certainly moving now into speaking to the schools to get the kids on board, because we believe that this is a serious issue with the Asian Hornet, and we do need the public behind us because we need their assistance to act as our eyes and also our ears in respect of if they should hear of anything, then they can report something back through their teachers and back through to us. But we've certainly got from the people that we've spoken to so far a very, very positive reaction from professional bodies, and they are on board with us. They recognise the plight and the seriousness of it, and that's it. So we're doing something very, very proactive within Torbay, and we've equipped ourselves to actually deal with trackings and incursions. So there we go.
Thank you. Colin, yourself?
Well, good evening, everybody. My name's Colin Lodge, and effectively, I'm the guy who thought of setting up Asian Hornet action teams. What are we talking about? Last year, when Martin Hocking, 2017, when Martin Hocking has his incursion at Woolacombe, he wrote an article in the BBKA News, and I read it, and I was sort of incensed, very angered by National Bee Unit's response to him and the way he was sort of kept out of things. And I started making noises to our beekeepers at Torbay and said, we need specialist teams in every beekeeping association who make themselves responsible for all matters Asian Hornet, to identify them, to give the public some awareness of them, to give reassurance to beekeepers and the public, and so on. And then initially to start tracking them down. We had the Harbourton meeting last January, which kicked off everything for what I call the Devon Initiative. And out of that has grown the Asian Hornet Action Team network that we've got in the southwest, and little by little it's creeping up the country. I've heard today there's another one starting up, but it slips my mind where that is. The last one to formally join was Exeter. We actually got them on board, which is good to know, because they had actually been resisting sort of doing anything about it for a little while. But now I think this latest outbreak down in Cornwall has actually frightened people into thinking, well, we have got to do certain things, and we're going to start joining. And I've got news that there are people up country doing exactly the same thing.
Brilliant. Would you like to give us a quick overview as to what Asian Hornet Action Teams are all about? We can perhaps share a screenshot of the website then, and you can give a quick overview before we get into the crux of it.
Yeah, Jerry will start.
Okay. As a result of the meeting at Harbourton, there were several issues that were flagged up. So we felt that we needed to do something more proactive. And so we put together a policy document, and I'll read it out in brief to you. And that's this is Torbay's response to the incursion, because you may recall that we had the first incursion of of the varroa mites, and that was at our apiary that we had at Cockington, and this was on the 4th of April 1992. And so it was a real big issue. So we proactively got into putting forward proposals for the small hive people, and of course we've now taken the Asian Hornet very, very seriously indeed. And so this is our policy document in response to the incursion, and that's for us to proactively assist the seasonal bee inspector and the national bee unit to identify local Asian Hornet incursions, and this is in order to assist with the speeding up of the reporting process and confirmation that it is an Asian Hornet. And this will be achieved by enhancing local public awareness and professional bodies via talks, visits and presentations, which we are progressing through at the moment. We started it a few weeks back and we're progressing those talks. And secondly, forming action teams, which we have done now, and this is of dedicated beekeepers to deal with local reports of sightings. And what we'll do there is once we receive a report, we'll investigate and we will record the report. And we will gather evidence to confirm incursions by way of photograph or capture of the hornet. And I've been across to Jersey. I've dealt and I've captured and marked and tagged and tracked hornets. And so I feel pretty confident that they are easy to catch and they are easy to mark. And once you've marked the hornet, you can return them back onto the bait for them to finish drinking up the Sutera. You can recapture them again, walk down towards the direction that they're flying in and release them at a particular point to get another directional bearing from it. So we found that they haven't been that aggressive to us, that we are able to capture and recapture them, which is quite a significant thing with them. And
Jerry, Jerry, can I interrupt just a moment and ask you, when you finish what you're saying, to clarify what Sutera is, because I don't think a lot of people will know what that is, please.
Okay, so just going back to one of the policy points, so it's to gather evidence and confirm incursions by way of photograph or capture of the hornets. And so by using the bait, which is called Sutera, and it's made by a company called Dow. It's a red fluid, smells a bit to me like nail drops and pear drops and nail varnish. It's got a peculiar smell, and but it's certainly a very, very effective attractant to the Asian Hornet and also to the wasps, because you've got a multitude of wasps that go on that. And when they land next to the Asian Hornet tends to sort of, if one gets too near, dispatch it straight away with a bite. And but the wasps at the present time are currently dwindling, so we haven't got that sort of effect of the wasps mopping up. But we found that if you put out a bait station or a trap, if there's Asian Hornets within the particular locality, then they will be on that bait station within 15 to 20 minutes. So anyway, just going back to the our policy. So it's easy then to catch the hornets. So we can either confirm by photograph or capture the hornet and send that off to the National Bee Unit, because one of the big issues was that came out during that meeting at Harberton was the mobilisation of the National Bee Unit. Now, I totally understand this, that it costs a lot of money. And I believe it's something like 4,500 reports that they had last year to actually deal with them. And time and mobilising units to actually come and deal with an incursion, obviously, is very, very costly. And so by doing this in Tor Bay, we can capture or photograph the hornet, send it off to get that ball rolling and thus speed up. And so the other point for our policy is, where possible, locate nests for health and safety assessment and eventual destruction by professional team arranged through the National Bee Unit protocol. So we have got the tapes, we've got the stakes, or if there's other issues in which there's a question on entry to land, if there's a public safety issue in which the public are at risks, we will notify the local police and the police will come out and they'll cordon off for us until such time that the National Bee Unit come. So we are doing something quite proactive within South Devon.
I've got to get a screenshot here of the website as well. Let me just pull it
Sorry,
back.
what did you say?
There we go. So this is the Asian Hornet Action Team website. Colin, do you want to give a quick sort of brief overview as to what the website covers?
Basically, yeah. Right. We've got under aims, we've got our the 4 principles under which we sort of operate. What can you put the put it up on the screen again for me, please, Rodri?
There we go. Yeah.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. We've got an identification page where people can have a look and see what an Asian Hornet is like and compare it with European Hornet, so that there are no identity issues. Because one of the things we found during this year, we've had a lot of people getting in touch with us saying, we found Asian Hornets, we go out to them, and they turn out to be Vespa Crabro, the European Hornet, and we have to reassure them. We've got a part of the website is a directory for people to go on to find out where their local Asian Hornet Action Team is, or if there is one in their area. And then the advice is, if you haven't got one in your area, you go to your local beekeepers, or you have to resort to going onto the official reporting sites, and then have to wait for MBU to triage the report and then come out to you. And it can take anything up to sort of 4 or 5 days. I say up to, they have done it quicker from good photographs. But we've also got some photographs on there that show Asian Hornets and photographs of other things that are measured against a 50p piece, so people get the scale of it and so on. It really is important if you're sending photographic evidence, that you give some scale indication in that photograph.
It sounds like, from what you've been saying, identification is key, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
We've had a few questions on that, actually, and a lot of the questions relate about trapping the Asian Hornet. Barry and Peter have asked us, what is the difference between an Asian Hornet monitoring trap and a killer trap? And that goes on to ask, to trap or not to trap. So I know there's differing views there on that. Kevin, do you want to have a quick go of those questions?
Sure. It comes back to, from our perspective, I think, whether you're trying to learn about the species and you have the luxury of the time and lack of predation on local honeybees to be able to trap and research and understand and grow your knowledge, which, to be fair, I wish we'd had the time to do that here in France. By the time we moved here, hornets were already eating honeybees. And it's a luxury we envy you in the UK, to be honest. And for us, day to day, week to week, month to month, our focus isn't on capturing and understanding Asian Hornets. It's on actually trying to stop them from eating our honeybees. So we will trap to kill, and we'll trap to kill not just the individual hornets, but we'll trap to try and kill at certain times of the year the mated queens, particularly in the spring. There is a window in the hornet's life cycle. Beecraft have produced, not a deliberate plug for you guys, but it's a nice, easy to follow flowchart of the Asian hornet's life cycle.
Yeah.
And if you actually look into this creature, we realize how much we don't know about the Asian hornet life cycle. So most beekeepers that have studied beekeeping can tell you there are 3 castes of bee within a colony, and they know what each of the jobs of those 3 castes are. We actually don't know that much about Asian hornets yet. We know that there are males, we know that there are workers, and we know that there are queens. We've got an idea of what the male's job is, and we've got an idea of what the queen's job is, but the life cycle is different. So how that links back to trapping is that we know only only a mated queen comes through the winter. And she typically hides on her own, somewhere safe, dry, protected from the elements that she can basically hibernate. I'm paraphrasing slightly. So wood piles is a great example, or indeed old bumblebee burrows in the ground, but that they've been reported to be living in there. That queen will emerge when the temperature is greater than about 13 degrees. So typically in our part of France, that's mid-February. And for 5 or 6 weeks, 45 days, because that is the gestation period for an Asian hornet from egg to hatching as an adult, she is carb loading. She is landing on every flower she can find to ingest as much carbohydrate through nectar as she can to grow her own strength and to grow her own nest. So during that period, mid-February to May, but give or take, it's not calendar derived, it's weather derived. But give or take, during that period, the queen is on her own and she is making an embryonic nest, and every day she makes one cell and she lays one egg. And then the next day she makes another cell and she makes another, and she'll lay another egg. And after 45 days of that, the first one will hatch to be able to help her. But until that time, she's doing everything on her own. She's foraging, she's nest building, and she's feeding. So that's the point at which we will put traps out, somewhat selfishly, because we're looking after our bees, I appreciate. But we will put traps out that have a heavy carbohydrate-oriented lure or an attractant in them. And we've got a picture of a trap that's designed to differentiate between any other kind of insect and hornet, so a European hornet and an Asian hornet queen. So I don't know if you can share that, Rodri, or if I'm talking, it'll just revert back to me or not. I'm not sure. Well, there you go. I can see it. Can everybody else see that picture?
Not on the full screen, no.
All right, so in that case, then I will.
There it is.
Oh, there it was. Gone.
That's becoming a cliche.
I'll tell you what, I'll share it from here then.
Yeah,
if you don't mind, Rod.
Oh, there you go. It's gone again.
Is it on screen now? It should be on screen.
Yes.
It'll stay on screen until I start talking, though.
Oh, okay. Right.
No.
So there you go. If I talk, you should be looking at a picture of our selective mated queen hornet trap. And it is highly technical, as you can see. Lolly sticks, a bit of sponge, and 2 water bottles. Okay. And the reason we use this is because we're trying not to catch other kinds of insect. We're trying to be a bit more discriminatory. So there's a reason that hole at the top, for example, is 9 millimeters, because the hornets can get in, but the European hornets can't. They are too big. The bait exists in a sponge at the bottom, and the carb-heavy bait, you can buy proprietary baits, but we tend to follow what some of the old-school French beekeepers have been telling us to use, which is a mixture that gives a bit of sweet and sour. If you have the sweet, you'll attract even your own bees, but if you sour it up a little bit, it's only the hornets that are interested. So it is typically a mixture by thirds of dark beer, cider or white wine, and some fruit juice, so concentrated fruit juice like squash or syrup, or a little cassis even. We know French beekeepers will use cassis. And that, or instead of the cider, you can use red wine vinegar or white wine vinegar. It just gives that slightly savoury edge to the bait. And what will happen is that the hornet will enter where that red rectangle is at the top, will fall down through the inverted bottle onto the sponge, which is soaked in that liquid bait. If anything that isn't a hornet is accidentally trapped there, well, they can get out through that 5 and a bit millimeter hole at the bottom, but the hornet can't. The queen can't. And the whole point of doing this is so that we can stop that queen starting a new nest, because each queen can make a new nest, which can have anywhere up to 1,000 or so individuals in it. So that's why we trap. And what we will do with that trap is take that queen out and we will kill her, because it's the only way we know to stop. If we release her, she will go and form a new nest. With workers, it's a little bit different. What we've been trying to do in terms of trapping the worker, and there are a couple of designs of trap that are used here to capture a worker, is that we will capture them and we will try to, and again, we sound awful, and I make no apologies for this, but we really are in dire straits in trying to look after our honeybees. There's all sorts of forums here in France with various recipes, and the one that's currently being tried by lots of beekeepers that we know is to mix a poisonous paste with the active ingredient being fipronil. And fipronil is the active ingredient in miticides like the spot-on treatment you buy for fleas and ticks on cats and dogs. And the recipe is 1 medium-sized dog tube of fipronil mixed in medium-sized dog, because it's a stronger dose.
Right.
Because fipronil is dosed by weight of the animal. So, and other people have experimented with this, because if you put too much fipronil on the hornet, you'll kill it outright. If you don't put enough, it'll just get away. And the point being is that we want to put some fipronil into a media that will not only stick to the hornet you've captured, but the other hornets, when it gets back to its nest, will help that hornet groom off and even consume. So, drop of water, egg yolk, a little flour if you need it to thicken. So you're basically making an egg yolk custard, and fipronil. And you are making a bright yellow paste. And with a matchstick, the original advice was a cotton bud. We struggled with that. We couldn't get the custard off the cotton bud onto the back of the hornet. We're capturing the hornets, holding them from the underside, and dabbing this custard with the fipronil on it onto their thorax. The thorax at the back, like a cat or a dog, between the shoulder blades, is the only place they can't clean themselves. So you need the mixture to be weak enough so that it doesn't kill that individual, sticky enough so that it doesn't fall off, so that individual goes back to the nest. Other animals groom it, consume it, because it's high protein, it's egg yolk, and they will then basically die. And the maths has been done here locally, and it's believed that if you can treat anywhere between 5 and 10 worker Asian hornets with this treatment, that's enough to damage a nest sufficiently that will actually collapse in and of itself. It'll degrade through lack of forage and lack of critical mass for the bees to keep making the new cells for new eggs to be laid in. So that's right. I mean, that's right now what we are trying. We're also using Babington rackets, and the lovely people from New Battle Beekeeping Association in Edinburgh have been here this week, in fact, helping us swing away to try and deal with some of the hawking hornets that are right in front of the hives, whilst we've been trying to gently capture some to poison to take back to the nests.
I don't know if you want to share your photo that you had, Kevin, of the result.
I can, yeah, happily.
Can you just say again, please?
Which,
what did you say?
Oh, sorry. Kevin's going to share a photograph with us of the results of his badminton exercise.
Okay.
There we go. That is 5 minutes work in front of just 2 hives.
Wow.
I think that really goes to show the difference between what you're experiencing in France at the moment to, you know, our very limited sightings at the moment, isn't it?
Can I just say one thing about this? we found a nest, and I'll just show this on the camera, and I'll show a sequence of photographs. Can you see that? Yeah, yeah. That's one of the nests that we took down and actually destroyed, and we sort of took it apart. So there's grubs there, and there's the nest being opened up, and as we go through, and I'll skip through a couple of the photographs, but we destroyed 4 nests after they've been taken down alive. Now I don't know whether you can see that one. That's one of the young coming out. They're called callows.
Yeah.
And we tried out of the 4 nests that we took alive and put into a dustbin. We tried various methods to destroy them. The first one was propane gas. I suggested to Bob Hogg, who's one of the main leads for the AHAT teams in Jersey, and I suggested perhaps a good thing to use would be a piece of rag with a bit of petrol, and then just throw it to the dustbin, and the fumes would kill them. But he tried propane gas, and then we tried carbon dioxide after that. Now, when we took apart the nests, and this is what I've probably got a little bit of a problem with. I think your idea of using the poison and dabbing it on the hornets would be effective to certainly knock them down. But these callows were still hatching out after being poisoned 3 and 4 days after the event. And in fact, the larvae were still alive. So I just, I'm not totally convinced that they'd be that effective. I think it's, certainly worth exploring, but having seen them living 3 or 4 days after, until they were eventually otherwise destroyed, it seems as though they are very, very resilient within their silk cocoons.
I think resilient is being wonderfully euphemistic, and I couldn't agree with you more. These things are hard to kill. They are hard to kill. They are tough, and we agree 100%. And I'm speaking from certainly not just my perspective, but our bee club's perspective here as well. If we could find the nests the way you guys have been so successfully doing so in the Channel Islands, we would agree with you 100%. This really is if I were to call it a desperation measure, it would be perhaps too strong a way to describe it, but we're doing it because we cannot find the nests. And I agree with you. That's got to be priority number 1, as well as probably alongside getting those mated queens in the spring before they start making those new nests in the following year.
I wonder if you could give us a brief overview how you identified the nests. What is the process of, you mentioned taking a bearing off the returning foragers earlier. How was it done in Jersey?
Right, Jersey. Well, the thing is that they've got the public on board, and that's a key issue. You need to make the public aware, and the public were absolutely incredibly supportive. You've got the government working behind them, so that they are paying money for the Sutera, the bait. They're paying for radios. They're paying for other expenses and equipment for the beekeepers there. And you've got a lot of beekeepers, together with members of the public, volunteering their time in a plight to try and track down the hornets. And when I went away from Jersey, which was a couple of weeks ago, the nest count of identification of primary nests and the secondary main nest, which is usually up in a sycamore tree about 50 feet up in the air, but not exclusively, because as you will no doubt say, in France, they've been found in the ground and also in bushes, brambles. And in fact, as I left a day or two later, there was a guy seriously injured when he was trimming a bramble hedge, which was head height. So how do they actually track them? Well, a report comes in that Asian hornets have been sighted either by a beekeeper that they're hawking the hives, And that's quite an interesting thing to actually observe, the hawking behaviour of the Asian hornets around the hive. And bait stations are then set up at that locality. And what we do, I've got some equipment here which we've set up, and this is the sort of thing that Jersey beekeepers are actually doing. So each one of the team gets a box like this, and inside the box we've got the Sutera. Okay, that's the fluid, which is the bait. We've got a capture container to actually capture the Asian Hornet in. We've got a dish, which is just a plant dish, some tissues. We put tissues in the dish, and then we pour the Sutera on it. And that's so the Asian Hornets can actually land on the dish without contaminating their legs too much, because the position is that if they contaminate their legs, they will fly from the dish and they'll fly to the nearest bush or tree, and they'll spend 2-3 minutes or even 5 or 10 minutes cleaning themselves up. So it's quite essential that you put a rock or maybe an upturned saucer in a dish if you're using a bigger one, and that's so that they don't contaminate their feet. They take up the fluid between 30 seconds to 2 minutes, and it depends upon whether they have to just drink it up. 30 seconds is really good. 2 minutes, it's a painful wait for us, and they're wasting our time. And then what we do, we allow the hornets to fly backwards and forwards to that bait station 3 times before we then catch her in a queen catcher. And she's very, very easy. Once you allow her to settle and take on fluid, the bait, you then put it over, mark her, and this is in the box as well, with a queen marking pen. We use different colours because we work in teams of 4. So each team has got one of these boxes, and they've got different colours. So what we will do, we will mark her, allow the marking to dry, and then return her back onto the bait, and she will obligingly just suck up the bait and continue to feed. Now, once she's taken up the feed, we then use a stopwatch and we time her. So Asian Hornet marked white, we time her, and we know, we've worked out the timings, that it's about 3.5 meters per second that she flies at. So if you're looking at the mathematics, and they were running tests, and we've got a member of our team, Judith Norman, that's returned back today from Jersey, and she was chasing up the actual timings, because we had bait station monitored with a stopwatch, beekeepers with pest control going up to an Asian Hornet nest on a cherry picker, and different hornets from different stations by radio were being told, right, white is on its way, and then white has arrived. The timings were written down, the timings of unloading the bait. So we know that she'll take between 30 seconds to 2 minutes to take up the bait. And so we've got the accurate timing, so we can work out from that the distance involved. And so we're going to have that clarified very, very shortly. But once we know that the speed that she's traveling at, then we know the distance involved. And what we do, we use a rangefinder.
Back to GCSE physics, doesn't it?
So there we go.
He's
a
come well prepared, I
rangefinder.
tell you.
Yeah, can you see that? And that will give us the distance of the trees. And so, for instance, if she's away for 4.5 minutes, we will know that roughly she'll be about 820 meters flight distance there and back. So you halve that, you take the deduction from the download of the bait time, and Bob Hogg from Jersey said that quite honestly, she spends a lot more time in the nest, so that cuts down the flight time. And so we can then advance with our bait station. So if you think about the compass, our bait station will be in south, We will then get the hornets coming backwards and forwards and flying onto that bait station. Once we've got 3 flights, we will then mark the queen and time her with a certain colour. We will then capture any other ones in the pots once they're fully fed and advance from that south base station to north, because she will disappear over or in between houses and do a left. They don't fly directly back to the nest. They'll fly through a gap, over a gate from a farmer's field, and they'll do left or right down the road, go to the junction and turn left or right again and go that distance back to the nest. And I was at St Lads, and I was timing hornets returning back from the nest at 4.5 minutes. And I saw these hornets coming up the steps, flying up these steps a foot high from the steps, and weaving all the way back to the bait station, so that they take different routes. Now, apart from that, we will record the times with a small pocket book. We've got clean-up tissues in the box. We've got samples, so it's quite easy. If we've got Asian Hornets visiting the bait station, we will capture one, and there we've got it. We've got the ability to photograph. We then capture one, put it into this test tube, and that gets sent off to the National Bee Unit for them to identify that we've got it, and they can mobilise their men, stroke women, and get to us. So additional pens, and that's what we do to equip ourselves within Tor Bay.
Really? I didn't realise it was such an organised response, to be honest.
Oh yes, oh yes.
Yeah. We take it very seriously.
My secret wish is that there's some senior bee inspectors actually watching here, because these guys who've been out in Jersey could teach them a thing or two, I think. They seem to be coming back with all the knowledge that we need to be able to put this into action, if National Bee Unit lets us.
I suppose it's first-hand experience, isn't it?
Say again?
It's first-hand experience.
Yeah.
They're not quite doing all of this in Jersey. This has been sort of developed because we went across there to think, right, how can we save time? And that's it. So,
is there a similar response in France, Kevin? Sorry.
No, and no, and the ship has sailed on that particular boat, and I'm just sitting here in silence, marveling at the fact that amateur, and I don't mean amateur in a negative sense, I mean non-professional beekeepers like the guys we're talking to here have been able to develop a technology, develop and utilize a methodology, secure funding for it, source an army of individuals to actually make it happen, and do it when the numbers are small enough so that you can make a preemptive difference. And if the National Bee Unit in the UK doesn't want to listen, come here. Come stay with us. Come stay with us and help us locally. You'll be lauded as heroes.
One of that they have been across to help. One of
the things that was said, it's been mentioned already. I think Jerry mentioned it. National Bee Unit told us in January 4,500 sightings have been reported to them in 2017. Only one of which proved to be accurate. And a certain person's comment was, that shows how bad beekeepers are at reporting sightings of Asian hornet. They don't know what.
Exactly the opposite.
The person who did report one, he was actually a beekeeper. I think it's, and I've also asked National Bee Unit to identify the interest groups that have made those reports. They've not been able to do that yet, to my satisfaction. In fact, they haven't done it at all. So we don't know if it was beekeepers reporting these sightings or not anyway. I think it's more significant that the one accurate report was made by a beekeeper. I also think, and I've not been out to Jersey, much to my regret, I've not been able to go, but the quality of work that people like Jerry and Judith and Simon O'Sullivan in Devon and so on have been, and Sarah Bunker have been doing, wonderful stuff, and they really are thinking hard. There's some fine scientific minds out there too.
I think that. Sorry, Wendy, go on.
So I was just going to say, I've seen a couple of emails, and I was actually going to say myself, could those photographs of the nest, could you put them onto Facebook, or send them to us to put onto Facebook, put onto the AHAT site? There's been a lot of interest in that, and actually the spelling of the
proprietary date.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, we'll get things have been happening so fast, Wendy, that it's been hard to keep up with what we can put on the website and what we don't need to, because it will just flood it.
Yeah. Are you restricted by the NBU as to what you can and can't say? Because I picked that up earlier on this week, that everybody's been told to keep quiet.
Yes, yeah. That started happening when Martin Hocking was involved in that second incursion. I believe the people in Tetbury who had the first incursion and the first nest found, they were told that, and we've had very little out of the Tetbury beekeepers because they were told to keep quiet about what happened and how it was done.
I mean, yeah. I've been trying to contact people in Cornwall and not getting any response, and I have picked up that's the case.
I suspect it's an Official Secrets Act problem.
Well, was the same did the same thing happen with Varroa when Varroa came into this country?
No. Well, the thing is this, that they were quite pleased that it was found, and as a result of it being found in Tor Bay, that they did an all points bulletin to all beekeepers throughout the UK, and everything south of the Wash, if you were to draw a line, go south, was infected. And so we know that it was in France back in 1975, poised in 1976 to come across the Channel, but it wasn't until 1992 that it was found at our apiary at Cockington. So, and this is why we take things really seriously.
Absolutely. I mean, I don't understand why, if there are so many sightings, why the NBU and the alert non-native people who are they're all strapped for people to deal with things.
That's what we've been telling them.
Yeah, why they don't say contact your local beekeeper, or contact, what about local pest controllers at the in the council? I mean, that's an on the ground thing. I mean, I know you don't want the pest controllers going out, but if there's something that they actually don't want to deal with, they will contact the local beekeeper and offload something if they don't want to deal with it.
We've been telling our local pest control in Tor Bay, anything that's hornet based, whether it be European or Asian, suspected Asian hornet, to notify the AHAT team, because we want to deal with it. And the thing is this, that clearly at 4,500 calls or whatever it was last year, they cannot deal with everything. They cannot expect their bee inspectors to go to all calls. And last year, we had a call in Plymouth. Straight after Woolacombe came up, about 2 or 3 weeks later, Plymouth came up.
That's right, it did.
Possible sighting. And then Broadstands in Tor Bay came up. And I spoke to the bee inspector there, and I said, I have got Asian hornets, because what we do in the first response is to visit the informant and say, is this what you saw? So show a bumblebee, a European hornet, a wasp, a honeybee, and can you identify the insect?
Yeah.
And then we've got insects in fluids in a preservative, and we can show them whether it's an Asian hornet or the European. And I said to one of the bee inspectors, I said, look, this is 5 minutes down the road. I can be there in 5 or 10 minutes, and I can speak to the people concerned, and I can show them these insects that I've got and sort of rule it out. But no, we're willing to cooperate, and it seems as though things are a little bit reluctant.
But who's going to do? The point is, they're not going to be able to deal with, if there is a lot of incursions at one time, they're not going to be able to deal with it all.
No.
Who's it going to fall to? It's going to fall to the local beekeepers.
Fall to us. And as far as I'm concerned, and I speak for myself, not for Torbay, I speak for myself. I don't care if they don't want to work with us. The thing is this, we are doing it. And we will get out there and we will deal with reports, because we're not going to sit back on our backsides and allow this to happen within Torbay. Yeah. So it's either, and if anybody, you, and I hope you're listening to this, if you don't want to work with us, then we will be doing it, you know, on our own. So
sometimes
it isn't the forum for us to put right the wrongs of government policy, etc. But I admire your passion, and I could not agree more with you in terms of beekeepers being responsible for our own destiny here to a certain extent, and therefore inextricably the destiny of our own bees. And there are all sorts of things that we can be doing, and the information that is on the AHAT website mirrors a lot of the information that's available on the French version. And there is an association which is AAAFA.fr or AAAFA.com.
Can you say that again?
Sorry?
Can you say that again? AAA?
AAA F for Freddy .com or .fr. You'll get there both ways.
.fr.
And that's a group just like yourselves of beekeepers who are experiencing what we experience week in, week out, deciding that Big Brother is not helping. Let's just get out there and let's do what we can. Let's put our heads together and let's mobilize as much as we can to share ideas, designs, thoughts, experiences, what's worked, what hasn't worked. And I think if you guys take anything from what's gone wrong here, it will be, I think, exactly as you guys in the West Country are doing. And that is, don't wait for somebody else to come and help you. Get out there and help yourself, which you are evidently doing and doing very well. Things like, just to keep it practical, just as a suggestion for a moment, things like design these French beekeepers.
Yes. Yeah, that's it. Exactly the same. Yeah, well done.
You've got these things. I can't take any credit for this other than downloading some plans from that website I just mentioned and making it to fit onto our hive. This is practical day-to-day stuff that can be done in parallel with all of this excellent work that you guys are doing.
What exactly is that, Kevin? It fits over the front of the hives, is it?
It is a muzzle, and it's been cut to fit our French Dedant hives. And the inside profile, this actually sits, so that the cutout here is for the landing board. That's for the side of the hive. And then there is a cheek piece on either side, which you actually screw into the side of a wooden hive or pin. It's not very light, it's heavy, it's made out of plywood. It has 25mm mesh in it, so 1-inch mesh in old money. And that mesh is too small, the gaps in the mesh are too small for the Asian hornets to fly through. But our honeybees can. And we were quite pleased when some French beekeepers came up with this idea, these plans, all given away for free on a resource just like the one you guys are managing, which is awesome. Our bees aren't learning, however, as quickly as the hornets seem to be. So what's effectively happening is, you imagine this sits on the front of the hive, the landing board is back here where my hand is, and our bees have decided this was supposed to be a safe deceleration zone. So that when the bees were outside of this mesh, they would be flying at full tilt and therefore much harder for the hornets to catch. And for one of our hives, that's actually turned out to be the case. The bees can get through the mesh and they'll decelerate inside, makes it much harder for the hornets to predate on them. What ended up actually happening, though, with two of the hives, in fact, was that the bees decided to develop their own little one-way system. And they decided to enter through the bottom and accelerate out through the top. Okay. So they were going full tilt by the time they came through the mesh at the top. Really difficult for the hornets to catch. And underneath, they were slowing down to get through the mesh. So all the hornets just decided to hover and hawk underneath the mesh.
Yeah.
So we actually have taken them off temporarily just to try and rework the designs. And just as you guys are suggesting and putting out an impassioned plea for beekeepers to join the fight, beekeepers are throwing lots and lots of ideas in that says, take the solid ends out, make the ends mesh in the same way, if possible, so that the bees have got a different avenue. Just make it harder for those predating hornets to get anywhere near your precious bees.
Don't allow the bees to go down or come up through the bottom.
Exactly. We have one right now that just has a piece of hardboard in the bottom.
Yeah.
Stopping the bees from doing that. And if anybody wants these designs, wants these ideas, you will find them on that website we just talked about. You'll find them on Facebook groups. There's one called Beekeeping in France, which is not very imaginatively named, I fully appreciate. But on that group, people share these ideas. And I hope, I really, really hope, we do collectively, that the work that you guys are doing in Torbay will spread like a positive infection around the UK. And not least to where they had a sighting earlier on this week in Hull, I believe. That it will spread.
Sorry, Kevin. There's an awful lot of organisations in the UK, isn't there? You know, the national teams, they do very good work. The Asian Hornet action teams, they do outstanding work as well. And it's a case of everyone working together almost to. It's a massive challenge, and using this first-hand experience to overcome it, I suppose. So it's everyone coming together.
There's been a couple of questions that have come in. Sorry, Rod.
No, go on. Yeah.
About the noise that they make. I mean, there's a couple of people who've said that the European hornets in and around my apiary usually let me know they're there with their loud buzzing often before I see them. Can the Asian hornet be heard similarly? If so, is it louder, less loud, about the same?
About the same, really.
Yeah.
Their flight is quite magnificent. They can actually just hover in midair, and the thing is that you grow to sort of having having dealings with it. You grow to sort of admire it, and I know that it's a deadly pest.
Yeah. But
it is quite fascinating and it is quite intriguing. So they're about the same noise. In fact, we've got within the UK what they term as the hornet hoverfly, or it's termed the belted hoverfly, and we've had this one since 1940, and it was first found in the UK back in Eastbourne, Bournemouth, and also Bristol. And by 1942, this particular insect was predominant in southeast London, which is quite curious because that would have been during the bombing blitz, you see. But, anyway, the thing is that the noise that makes can be quite daunting, and a lot of people mistake the belted hoverfly, or the hornet hoverfly, as it's called also. They can mistake that for a hornet. But,
because of the sound.
Yeah, because of the sound.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. And is the Asian the European hornet is easy to distinguish with its tannish colour and bright yellow flash. Can the Asian hornet be seen as easily?
Well, it can certainly be noticed easily, but it disappears from your vision as it sort of goes in front of bushes. So if it goes from the bait station and moves to the right, and you've got some dark bushes, you've lost sight of it instantaneously. And as Martin Hocking described it, it flies very, very fast. It's estimated at 3.5 meters per second, and he described it as best. And I think, perhaps similar. It's like a fag end, lighted fag end flying off very quickly into the distance.
That's a good analogy, actually. European hornets, we describe them, and to new beekeepers and locals, it's black and yellow. You see the flash of yellow, it's a European hornet.
It's a wasp.
Yeah.
It's a large wasp, basically, yeah. The Asian hornets are black and orange. Where you see the colour, it's more orange. And the face, when they're hawking, so they're hovering, you get one to look at you, and it's easy to see where the science fiction and horror film directors get their inspiration from. The face is bright orange.
Yeah. The legs are yellow, aren't they? So, you know, that's a...
Yeah, I've had 2 or 3 reported this week, and photographs, and as soon as I've seen them, the absence of yellow legs has made me look a little bit closer, and then I've seen the yellow body and the black markings on the abdomen of the Vespa crapro. They are relatively easy to distinguish from one from another.
If I could just come in with a point here, the listeners might find it quite interesting. The hawking aspect is very, very fast indeed. And so you might just catch a glimpse of something black, snatching a bee in flight, and then going off in a particular direction. Now, if it's too quick and you think, oh, I didn't quite see what's happened there, if you look to the nearest bush, it's quite often you'll see that hornet hanging by a leg and dismembering the bee that it's caught. And so it's always worth pursuing, just giving your eyes a chance and seeing whether or not you can spot it up in a bush or a small tree nearby, because it dismembers it and then takes the thorax, where all the flight muscles are, to mash up to feed to the larvae.
Yeah, it's good advice, particularly if you only have 1 or 2. If you have 6 or 7, it's a bit tougher, but still the principle stands. Good advice.
I mean, quite honestly, if you've got Asian hornets in your locality, if you stick out Sutera on a bait dish, if they're there, they'll be there within 15 to 20 minutes, and you'll see quite a few of them, together with a host of wasps. So, and again, just to reinforce, they are easy to photograph when they're on that bait station, and they are easy to catch, but you've got to give them chance. Okay, let them suck up some of that fluid, the bait, and then move in to catch them, and do it quite smoothly and slowly, and don't rush it. So no sudden shadows or jerky movements. Do it nice and slow, and you can easily catch them in these containers, which I showed you earlier. Yeah. Screw lid, catch them, and then you've got your evidence to start mobilising the national bee units. And that's
an interesting question for both. You sort of professional exterminators deal with the Asian Hornet? I remember photographs of people covered in protective equipment last time, with sort of respirators almost, wasn't it?
Yeah, I'll show you.
I've got something to say about this. I've actually done a little bit of research amongst professional pest control firms and exterminators in this country, and I've asked them what training have they been given by National Bee Unit, or instructions or anything. What have they been told? And it would seem very little. One said, I've been sent the poster and it says on that, report directly and don't try and go near the nest. That was his response, and that was the sum total of what he knew about it.
What do they do in France, Kevin?
No, good. So, share the picture first. It's speak up, Colin or Jerry, because then everyone will see your picture.
Okay, I'm just showing that while Colin was speaking, so carry on.
So that's like a very heavy-duty suit, doesn't it?
Yeah, it comes from France. The suit comes from France, and as you can see, it's fully enclosed because there's a video on YouTube, and it's from Jersey, and it's from John de Carteret, and it shows the first nest that I showed you pictures of being captured alive, and it shows you the Asian Hornets attacking the camera, and the drowning of the engine is overtaken by the noise of the hornets, and the hornets in flight were arching their abdomens and squirting venom into the faces of the 3 people up on the cherry picker.
Yep, the suits available here that exterminators will use and wear are, you can now actually buy them via our normal beekeeping suppliers, because yeah, absolutely. And they are. We've had a quick look, and there are. The only way I can describe it is they're a cross between a hazmat suit from a movie and neoprene. and it's done deliberate, or the ones we could buy retail anyway. And that's because
price are they, Kevin?
Sorry?
What sort of price are they?
Oh, about €200. They're not cheap.
Oh, that's not so bad as we've been told. We've been thousands.
Okay, well, maybe that's the ones the professionals would wear with better quality. But the idea was that the weave is so tight that the hornets can't get the sting through. The veil isn't right. It's actually like a perspex, a flexible piece of solid perspex protecting your eyes, just like that picture you showed. And we have, well, I've been stung. I have a mesh suit, which has been, they're becoming quite popular in the UK now. So and indeed here, you know, 3 layers of mesh, 2 thin, 1 thick. So you feel a bit like the Michelin Man when you wear it. I've been stung by an Asian Hornet through that suit, and it's supposed to be bee sting proof. And it is, to be fair. Bees never stung me through it, but an Asian Hornet did. They can sting apparently and again, it's only anecdotal evidence we have here, somewhere between 9 millimeters and 19 millimeters.
Jesus.
So, and my suit is a centimeter thick. So there's some anecdotal evidence on a sample size of 1, me, up by the apiary, that I got stung through this thing, and the suit's supposed to be a centimeter thick in terms of all the layers. So what the experts will do, and it links to what you guys were talking about making the public aware. The French public are aware not to handle the nests themselves when they do see them, to call an exterminator, and they will wear these quite advanced suits, and they will use a whole raft of techniques. Most popular, because it's probably cheap here, is something like this. It's a bit like a school show and tell tonight, isn't it? This is over the counter, available in a DIY shop or a garden centre, poison spray. And frelon is the French word for hornet. And it says you here, so here's the normal anti-frelon symbol, and marketers never want to miss an opportunity. There's a little flash that now says, now we'll deal with Asian Hornets as well. And this is basically permethrin. That is the active ingredient in here, which I know is not necessarily used in the UK, and I'm fairly certain, but it's been a few years since we lived there, is not available over the counter anymore. And this aerosol has a ginormous nozzle.
Please don't spray it.
Yeah, and no, I'm not spraying it now. and it is powered, the propellant is propane gas in this particular one. And this will spray up to 6 meters. And it's designed so that hobbyists, homeowners, can go and start to attack hornet nests, wasp nests on their own from the ground in alleged safety. I'm not sure. And whilst we want to be able to enable everybody to feel safe, the advice isn't go attack an Asian Hornet's nest on your own. I'm sure people are doing it, to be fair, because they can. Because for €20 they can buy this and go and do it. What we've seen this used for, and we have used it to remove hornets' nests from people's chimneys, because it goes so far. You can actually put it horizontally into the fireplace and squirt, and it'll go upwards and kill a nest for you to then go back 48 hours later and clear away the detritus. But we have seen exterminators on various videos and from beekeeping associations here in France that it'll be a 2-stage, not dissimilar actually to what we saw the guys doing in the Channel Islands, that they will, at a distance, spray something like this to kill the flying insects and basically to cover the surface and the entrance to stop any more coming in and going out. And then they'll go up on the cherry picker or the scaffold, take the nest down, and then they've put it into a dustbin, taken it away for incineration. I don't know the rights and wrongs of that. That's just what we've seen happen.
Yeah, they do it slightly differently there, Kevin. And so there's no destruction from the outside. And they go up in the cherry picker, and they've got a glass fiber rod or a carbon fiber rod, which is telescopic, and there's a charge. In fact, I've got a photograph here, which I'll get up. And what they do is to put a poison, which is the powder that you'd get from Rent-A-Kill, that type of thing.
Yeah.
And so, can you see that? That's the powder that they put it in. And so I'll just go back. It's fired by a gas sparklets cylinder, carbon dioxide, and they put a trigger, and that's the trigger bit. And so the telescopic pole is prodded through the nest, and they pull the trigger and it explodes in there. So there's a puff of powder. And usually when they do the destruction, so there's no killing of the hornets on the outside at all. None at all. And so it explodes inside the nest, usually blows the back out of the hornet's nest as well. And the thing is that some of this powder can actually take the hornets 22 hours or more to die. Now, that to me is a questionable thing, because the issues I think here is blowing out the back. That powder was clearly drifting in the wind. So what else is it going to kill? So it's going to kill beneficial pollinators. Also, the larvae fall to the ground, the callows that are emerging, plus adult hornets falling to the ground. They're going to be eaten by badgers. They're going to be eaten by other wildlife. And the thing is this, that there is a serious question here. And in fact, that question was raised by Bob Hogg when he spoke to us on New Year's Eve. We had a meeting with him for 3.5 hours in Torbay to get the background information about hornets and destruction and the way forward to deal with them. And so it is questionable. Now that spray, what does it spray out? A foam?
No, it's gas.
Oh, it's a gas, is it? Right.
Yeah,
okay.
Gas.
Now, I'd just like to reinforce this, that we in Torbay will not be buying those suits, because we will follow the protocol as directed by NBU. So our business, as far as the AHAT team is concerned, is to speak to the public, show them photographs, identify whether or not there is a likely incursion, because the public get it wrong. Colin and I went out to a call a few days ago, and the woman said, I've looked on the website, I've got an Asian Hornet in my bathroom. Well, it was a European. And that's usual with the public, and we found that in Jersey. Now, the situation is that we won't be buying the suits. We will be following the procedure of identifying an incursion, collecting evidence, samples, and then notifying the National Bee Unit so they can mobilise their units to come down and deal with it effectively, thus cutting down the time. Because with the incursion in Woolacombe, it was a real big issue, and it was a lot of time wasted. And it's, well, you haven't got the evidence, so therefore we're not going to mobilise, which you can understand because there's cost implications there.
Yeah.
So it will have to be, any destruction will be dealt with through National Bee Unit protocol.
Thank you very much. Well, Andy, have you got any more questions?
No, I think that's pretty much covered them all, actually.
I think we've about reached the end for this evening. Definitely a passionate topic, isn't it? So we'll perhaps try to run another one of these events in a few months' time. Perhaps get an update on the latest sightings and see if there's any further advice.
Can I just make one more
certainly go on
passionate plea? If there's anybody out there listening to us now who knows how to get a television program, presenter, company interested in this subject so that we can get a decent program made about it for the television. If somebody knows Sir David Attenborough, perhaps he's the one who I have tried to get hold of people in the BBC and so on, and none of them seem to want to know about it because it's not sensational enough at the moment. Give them a few months, a few years, and we get Asian Hornets on the mainland here, plaguing everybody, plaguing bees, plaguing the public. Then they'll be passionate about it. We haven't got that time.
That's probably the case. If we were experiencing what Kevin is now, it definitely would be in the public domain, wouldn't it? In the public domain.
I agree. It's got to the point where it's not the news anymore because it's so common. And I desperately hope that's not what happens in the UK.
Yeah. listen here, Kevin. We would like to sort of keep up links with you. So if you can give us contact telephone numbers, etc., we'd like to talk again.
Of course.
Yeah, through Rodri.
And any questions that we haven't managed to touch upon, we'll feed back on those as well. So, well, thank you everyone for joining in this evening. As I said, there's been a few Asian Hornet sightings out there, so I would recommend that everyone sort of keep up to date on the Beecraft website, the AHAT website, the National Bee Unit website, read around the subject and get used to the identification of the Asian Hornet. I think that's the key of tonight's event.
And spread it amongst your friends and relatives and the rest of the public. It's got to get out into the public domain.
I think beekeepers are very good at that. We do enjoy talking to people, especially at the event. So, I'm sure we won't struggle there. So, yeah, thank you very much. And we'll see you next month. Our next hangout is on the 31st of October. See you then. Cheers. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.